Guten Tag, Stephanie.
Guten Tag, Michael.
Together we'll look at population and economic growth projections for a specific country.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound all right?
Yes, but it would be nice to give us an idea why we're looking at this.
We'll look at, again, scenarios or projections on how population may change in the future or how economic development might happen within the future.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is to have a range of scenarios or a range of reasonable estimates on population and GDP in the future. So we can use this to question or explore how our current systems and infrastructure will be challenged or find benefit from different changes according to population and GDP as we move into the future.
Okay, makes sense.
I guess the idea is that the future is going to be different than now. That's basically all we know, but how much it changes, the further away we go from now, the sillier it becomes. But the future emerges from the present, and we're currently investing in making plans that effectively will form the future.
Mm-hmm.
So challenging these futures or testing these future or current plans and developments against future developments, including GDP or economic development and population, can help us explore what happens in the extremes of these development paths.
It's the aspect of, I think you've explained it well, how population affects, or population growth, decrease, affects everything
Right?
in our lives, economic, socially, environmentally, everything.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to a browser. We'll have more time to talk about different aspects about this, but let's go find the data. It's held at, let's go to a browser, and let's search for...
Sorry.
That's fine. Let's search for IIASA, I-I-A-S-A. That's where we are, the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis. Okay, then spacebar. SSP.
SSP.
It stands for Shared Socioeconomic Pathways. These are different scenarios in how the world might grow into or develop or cooperate into the future.
Sorry, you said social?
Shared Socioeconomic Pathways.
Okay.
And then database. It's already filled there for you now. DATABASE. It's this first link. It's not always the first link, but we're looking for the one that has within it TNTCAT. I'll also include this link in the video description. But this SSP database is exactly what we're looking for. Okay.
What is appearing now on my screen?
The terms of use of this data.
I'm sure.
Let's go to
well reviewed.
Let's go to welcome. I guess it's a disclaimer, which is a good point to say. These aren't projections that will say exactly what the population or GDP will look like. Not at all. It's a range of scenarios, and the scenarios themselves don't agree with each other, because that's the point. We want a range of scenarios that allow us to test in a quantitative way how the systems we're playing with will be affected by the population and GDP extreme scenarios. So we're preparing for some sort of resilience under... How resilient are our systems under a wide range of possibilities is the questions we can explore.
So, Michael, when you say how resilient systems, so in this context, what is a system?
I guess it depends what we're looking at. So it could be a city. It could be how a system is going to be affected by changes in population and GDP. It can be an entire country. It can be our world. It can be a specific part of a system, like just the agricultural component, just the industrial component. Even how a sector of a city will be affected by global changes in GDP and population can somehow be appropriate. So any part of a system or anything that can be affected by changes in population and GDP, we could consider a system here.
Makes sense.
Let's scroll down here, and we're going to be interested in downloading the data, so we'll have to register you we'll have to register your email.
Okay.
If you're comfortable with this.
No, I'm comfortable.
I think you push the button unless you've already registered, but I guess not.
Could I just try? I could do
Yeah,
like
sure.
just to see. So I put my email.
Yeah, but I guess we should email. Email is not yet registered in this SSP database.
Okay. So I'm just writing email, gmail.com. Okay. Okay. So
yes.
okay, I cannot. So I need to go to my email address.
Yes.
Appear in the updates. Mm,
I will remove this part from the video.
okay. No.
No trouble.
Okay, I haven't yet received it. There. Um. So they give me a password first.
Yes.
And then I need to copy this. I don't know what to do next from here.
Type in your email address as user.
Mm-hmm.
And then the password that you copied we'll put into here. Okay.
So this is to give you access to this database. Just general.
We can access this database even without registering, but this will allow us to download the data.
Okay.
Let's click on basic elements at the top. Is there a country that you're particularly interested in?
I'm gonna be biased, Kenya.
Okay, perfect. I'm curious to see the results. Okay, on the very left column, you'll see there's a checkbox for world. Can you unclick world? Scroll down slightly in this column. Yeah, and then you see countries. There's a plus button. Can you push the plus button beside countries for the drop-down menu? And let's look for Kenya. It's not necessarily in alphabetical, it's almost in alphabetical order.
Okay. Does it have all countries?
I guess so.
This is where you start your alphabetics and calculating. Okay.
Okay.
So
Good. Perfect. So we'll just look at Kenya. In the second column, can you scroll down slightly? So everything that's checked we want, scroll down slightly but there are 3 institutes giving GDP scenarios. We're going to include IIASA's and PIC's scenarios. So just click those 2 boxes here. Yeah.
what is because this seems important, the WPP and the WUP?
No, they are different. They are different people holding the historical data, but they might all look the same. They're not necessarily all different. So when we download the data, we can look at this more specifically.
Okay.
Okay, now that we have these boxes, let's click first this total button you see under population.
And
in the third column.
Population.
And click total.
Total.
Yeah, perfect. Now let's not look at this little graph, but we'll take it into Microsoft Excel. Well, we can already look at this little graph. You see here, this is what we'll download. So you see this...
Oh, the thing on the...
Yes, so we're looking at... So we see in some scenarios, it increases somewhat from the history and then drops to sort of where it is now. And in some others we see a linear growth of population. Let's download this with Microsoft Excel. So just towards the bottom left of the screen.
Bottom, okay. So how many options does one have in terms of downloading?
Oh, I only do it with Microsoft Excel here. The other ones are just graphics. Okay, so this is downloading. Let's leave this and download the GDP as well, the economic growth.
So I go back.
Yeah, go back.
Economic. Let me just go back to.
And let's click the PPP.
What does PPP stand for?
Purchasing Power Parity.
Okay.
It's a way at showing the true or actual purchasing power of a currency against other currencies, a way of sort of equalizing the purchasing power of a currency. Let's now download the Microsoft, or push the Microsoft Excel button towards the left again.
The Excel. Okay.
Yes.
In this case, we'll only be working with the Excel.
Yes. And one note, these scenarios should be taken with a grain of salt, because in some cases, well, it's coming from a global study. So local studies or government country-specific studies that talk about changes or developments in population and GDP can perhaps be taken more seriously. This is to give us, again, a range of scenarios with which we can do planning or questioning how the current systems will be challenged by parts of this in the future, or benefit from parts of this in the future. In some of these scenarios, please go ahead.
No, so it's something to give you a basis for your hypothesis or something of the sort. Okay.
So not to be taken too seriously, but to, if we find, it's better than assuming that things will be static, to assume the range of population and GDPs that are somehow within reasonable futures. Now, the future is necessarily not reasonable. It comes out simply as a result of the now, but it does give us a sort of quantitative framework with which we can question certain infrastructure systems or ways of planning.
But it just also says the way when we started, we predict the future by knowing the present and also create all these scenarios. So I think having an idea of if there's this such amount of increase or decrease, this is the probability of what most probably will happen, which you can estimate now.
Not even probable, because really they are estimates based on a methodology, but in some cases populations are going to go way above this, they're going to go under this. It's, again, a range of reasonable estimates, but if they are probable or not, I wouldn't dare to say that.
Okay. Are we by any chance going to our Excel sheet?
Yes, okay. We will just spend a little bit of time on this to look what comes out of this. So if you see the first rows that say IIASA GDP, IIASA GDP, there are 5 that say IIASA GDP.
The 5. Yeah, row 2 to 6.
Yeah. So these relate, and then you see another 5 and another 5. SSP1 through SSP5 are 5 shared socioeconomic pathways. So these are 5 narratives that describe how the world might develop or grow into the future. For example, SSP1 is something like the green path or the sustainability path. This narrative is a world that cooperates together, that goes right away to adopting renewable and green energies. And SSP5 is the opposite of that. There's less cooperation, there's distrust between nations, and there is a drive towards fossil fuels. They're simply narratives to give a range on possible extreme directions, and SSP2 through 4 are some mixture of this. This is an attempt at quantifying these narratives on how these different narratives might mean for GDP and population growth. So we have for GDP 45, 40, 206. Could you highlight rows 2, 7, holding control, just 2 and 7?
2 and 7.
Yeah, and could you push the number 7 on the left, like to highlight the whole row? Yes, and the
Okay.
same for number 2, and the same thing
So
for
we highlight the whole row.
whole row. 7 and then 12. Okay, so we see in this that they all look the same. So these 3 institutes are providing the exact same projection. It doesn't mean that they came up with the same idea individually. It means that there's just sort of one projection that they're playing with. So only one of them needs to be interesting when we're doing an analysis of this. Let's look at population and see if this is similar. Sorry, this is population. Let's look at GDP and see if it's similar. In the other Excel, the second Excel we downloaded.
I do have just this one. I do not.
Yeah, right there. This one should be fine. We'll see what comes up. Okay, good. Okay, so we see also here that the top section are the future projections. Well, they're going from 2010 to 2100. So other thing I want to say is that this can be outdated. This is assuming that 2010 and 2020 are in the future when in fact that's our present. So these can also be somehow outdated, up to 2100. Can we highlight rows 2 and row 7 again? No, they look different right away. Yeah.
Yeah, they are different.
So let's actually I want to graph this. Okay, can we highlight rows 12 and 13 starting from 1980? If we go to row 12 and 13 and then row J.
So row J, okay.
And then 1 down. Can we highlight the next 2 cells and drag it over to get the whole history?
So these 2 cells are the...
Actually, yeah, all the way to the end, 2010. Yeah, and then 1 down. Now let's copy this. And perfect. And let's take it to another sheet. So beside at the bottom where it says data, recommended citation, push the plus sign.
So we create a new... Okay.
Yeah, a new sheet. And paste it in maybe column B. Column B, row 1.
Just paste.
Just paste, yeah. Control V if that works. Okay. Okay, let's go back to the data.
So they're the...
And let's just look at... No, let's look at everything. Or this is population again. We were with GDP, I think.
So would you want the GDP or the population?
Yeah, let's do this GDP, yes.
Okay.
No, let's minimize this Excel. This is called IIASA GDP. It's confusing, but this is the population Excel. Let's keep looking at the GDP Excel.
I have 2 that are the same. Or the data.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Now let's go, perfect, a little bit back. Let's copy from F1, just without anything on the left, just from F1 all the way to the end.
Do you mean up to this?
Perfect.
Okay.
Let's copy this. Take this to our new sheet.
The sheet 1, where we put this.
And paste it in column J. Okay, we see what's interesting is that the first 5 projections start lower than the 2010 projection. So again, to be taken with a grain of salt. Because they look the same, can you undo that copy? And copy it in column I. Starting like right at column I1.
I1. Okay. So here.
Yeah. Okay, and let's just visualize this. If we yes, if we go to, let's highlight everything that we have in data. So like from B1 all the way to the end. We're not labeling this, but we see that for another step. And go data in the top.
I'm gonna move this data. Pressed it.
Maybe actually insert.
Insert.
Yeah, and you can hit recommended charts. And then go to all charts. Line. In the left column. Yeah, and the one on the right looks like it's picking it up correctly.
This.
Yeah. Yes. And you can push OK for this one. So yeah, just visualizing this, we see that the GDP projections of Kenya going to 2100 show an enormous range considering where it is right now. Like less than 1000, and some projections are going up to...
So question, with the series 1, 2, 3, the different ones are different scenarios or just from different projections?
Both. There are 2 institutes that are making projections. The first 5 are coming from this IIASA, and the next 5 I think are the OECD. And each of these 5 relate to the quantifications of the 5 SSP narratives. So you have SSP1 from both, SSP2 from both, 3, 4, and 5.
Gotcha.
Okay, so we could do the same thing for these... Okay, yeah, okay, that's what I wanted to
So you could do
together.
this with population, and you could do this also with GDP?
Yes.
Okay. And using all these data sets, they have used different scenarios?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so it looks like the future of Kenya shows, according to this, and this is the scenarios we're playing with, how are the current systems in Kenya going to be affected, changed, or influenced, bettered, or challenged by a significant jump in GDP? And we didn't look at the change in population.
And sorry.
Go ahead.
No question, Mikhail. I'm just curious. So who will be this information within the research is very relevant for? And also, is it all information open source?
This information is all open and available as long as you register. It's created by the Population and Justice Group at IIASA. How we use it in the water group is that we also do projections of the water model or the water cycle moving into the future, and water use is certainly affected by changes in population and GDP. Industrial, domestic, livestock, and irrigation demand is heavily dependent or a function of population and GDP as 2 factors that influence. So we use it here to come up with projections of water use for all regions moving into the future.
For anyone whose research looks at either future projections where population change or there's a key economic aspect that's influence, whatever the hypothesis is. I hope I'm making sense.
I think so. I would say anything that's exploring long-term planning could benefit from also considering how population and GDP changes may affect the current plan and resilience of these plans.
So for example, just an example I'm thinking, like in education, you want to put like an education budget or plan, and you're looking at what will be the population growth, and also you were talking about purchasing power. How many people could maybe afford in this aspect paying for education fees or expenses that come with it? This is something someone working in such area could also look at.
Yeah, like even ideas on huge infrastructure, like what are the benefits of building a university in a certain area? One should understand how the population or economic growth of a region may influence or affect the success of placing such a university in certain places.
Mm.
As an example. I guess the question comes up, really, we should be considering so many things as soon as we're making long-term planning. Everything is a system, everything is connected. But here's one way of just quantifying these futures in terms of population and economic growth that may help us create some numbers when it comes to exploring these future scenarios.
Most things are not static. I think you also say, yeah.
Right. That's all we probably know, is that things are changing.
How much it can change, that's why we have such models to create those different scenarios and see how that could look like.
Yeah, the models are, again, like the safe space to experiment with such things. In reality, these numbers may be totally off. But the closer we are to the present, maybe the more relevant these numbers could be. Going up to 2100, the world will be a totally different place than it is now.
Yeah, no, that I agree.
And the projections going out so far, even further, perhaps become sillier and sillier. But it is still worth coming up with an idea on how our systems now, built for now and really the next 7 generations, which we're going past 2100 with this. If this is the long-term systems thinking, sustainability, resilient thinking that we can bring into current planning and development, we can only benefit from such exercises.
Yeah, and it actually makes you make informed policy changes. It also makes you, which affects everything. Where do you put in your money? Where do you put resources? Both human capital and any other type of investment. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for doing this with me.
Thank you. It's interesting to see how, I think I enjoyed this because sometimes you read about models and all that, but you don't really kind of get a picture of exactly what it does or its potential. And going through this exercise gives me the idea of how relevant it is in almost every sector, whereby long-term planning or even short-term or mid-term is an agenda.
Well, now I'm curious about the population of Kenya. Do you want to visualize the population of Kenya?
Yeah.
Okay.
So where are we going?
Basically, everything we did in the GDP Excel, we're just going to do in the population Excel.
Okay. So we go to the population. So the pop.
Yeah. So we can copy the historical part, the bottom part of this again. I'm going to look up the current part. What's the current population of Kenya? Let me look it up. Okay, we can copy, so I think it's some rows down. Let's copy like from, if you scroll down slightly.
Past this.
Yeah, so let's copy from 1960, and they're all the same. Just starting at column F, F17.
F17 or 1960?
Yeah, copy all the way to 2010.
Only the blue sections or the white?
One white section.
One white.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Oh, so we're taking from one source.
Yeah, but they're all the same as you see.
Oh.
Okay, so the current population of Kenya is 47.5 million, according to the 2019 census. According to the Worldometers, it's about 55 million. So let's say between 55 million and more than 47 million in 2020. Okay, let's copy this and take it to a second sheet or a third sheet.
Could we use the one that we use the same? Does not matter.
This new sheet is good.
Okay. Created.
Okay. Now let's go to data again and see all the data that exists from 2010 moving to the future.
From 2010.
We can scroll all the way up to row 1.
Okay.
So if we go from F1.
F1. F1.
Yeah, all the way down to 16, and then all the way across to 2100.
So all the data from 2010 to,
Yeah.
I see 2090.
This should, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's copy this, take it over to our new sheet, and paste it at M1. Yeah, perfect. Okay, now let's highlight everything from B1 to the last data point and visualize it.
Could I try the step what it's supposed to be from a previous one?
Try anything.
Okay, so it was insert, recommended charts, mostly prefer line chart, all charts, line chart. I think this would make more sense.
Yes, this picked it up. Okay, so this population around 2020 of around 50 to 55 million is appropriate. So what will the population of Kenya, how is it growing? What do you see from this chart?
So you can correct me if I'm wrong. I am a little bit confused with how to interpret this, because you say the first series is from a different source of people, and then the second or the third row is different. But from here I see a rise, but with some projections showing almost plateau, and with some a slight decrease.
Yeah, we can
but just a plateau.
So again, there are 5 different scenarios from 3 different institutes here, and we can label them all properly. But the exercise I want for us to explore here is not to take any of these too seriously, but just to see like a range of things that might exist. Yeah, so we see some of them are tripling the population by 2100, going up to 150 million. Some, but all of them show some slight increase until like 2065, and then a slight decrease. But yeah, some linear, some steady growth, some sort of stabilizing. But yeah,
almost like a plateau, no change, no drastic change.
Yeah, I guess the thing is expecting Kenya to be, you know, the range is still huge. The range is like maybe 90 million.
Maybe the assumption is by that time, due to the population increase, there'll be more family planning or things like that. And economic purchasing power will be also changing, so might show why population reaches a plateau.
Yeah, yeah. All of these things are sort of within the narratives also of the SSP1 through SSP5. Yeah, so yeah, these things will obviously affect population. GDP affects population, population affects GDP, education. Yeah, everything is playing a role in this.
So just curiosity for people maybe who are not familiar with this, like IIASA also creates a lot of models in terms of systems analysis, or trying to understand how systems interact and differ, or will be impacted short-term, long-term, mid-term, long-term. But so how much work or expertise or interdisciplinary or co-production goes into creating such models?
Yeah, I guess it really depends on the model or the team that's working on them. Yeah, I get the opportunity to work with this water model, and this is a team of hydrologists and scientists that explore how to best create a community hydrological model. I guess the amount of work, it depends. A lot of passion is going into it.
Sorry, I've asked you such a you know, there is no right answer, but anyone, just sometimes people are curious, just how long do these models take?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. So in this water model, there's a team of maybe 5 people that work on the model development, and it started maybe 8 years ago, and now I've been here for 5 years working on it. I have several colleagues that work full-time on the model, some people that just use the model, some people that develop the model. Yeah, a lot of passion and interest goes into creating and refining this hydrological model, particularly because the hope is to build a community of people interested in using the hydrological model, but also tailoring it to their own regions of interest.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the goal also is to, correct me, to create something that can be context specific. Mm-hmm. So allows you to create your own scenarios, even though there have been narratives created within the scenarios.
That's actually a great point. These are some scenarios that have been created that people can use. But I mean, some of these models, the water model particularly, allows you to put whatever scenarios you wish to explore within them themselves. This is just a framework or some idea that can give you an idea also how to inspire the development of scenarios for your own region. And in fact, many of our projects, this is the first part of it, to work with stakeholders and experts for a region to explore what they believe are appropriate scenarios or narratives of development for their own region. Mm. This is a framework. This is globally, this is developed from a global study. So it's just sort of like a starting point. If you see that they're totally inappropriate or totally appropriate, then we know what the next step might be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to act as a starting point. Hmm. Yeah. It's been interesting learning this.
Are you surprised, or what did you think of the future of Kenya? Is this reasonable? Is it not reasonable? Which of these are more reasonable?
I think with the population one, with the economic, I'm not, because with the Nairobi, I think we're almost 4 million. We'll soon be heading 5. That's why when you asked the question population, I was not so sure. But I think it looks realistic if I was just to look at it plainly at the graph, because there will definitely be a steady rise, and then somewhere in between there will be some plateau. So with the graph it does kind of make sense, but it's also very interesting to see how much data is going into it. Yeah,
in the water model, when we explore these future projections, this is one part that we have used to explore how much water use will result from population or GDP in the future in different areas. So this is one of the inner workings, or one of the data we used inside of the water model for the future projections.
Yeah, and it's also quite interesting because the way water is upon population plays a big demand factor, because more population, more water demand, and also more infrastructure or more economic input, more water demand also, or dams are created, correctly. Yes. So there is more infrastructure, and you need something to give you a range of population, because how are you going to make this estimation?
Yes.
Yeah, so I see the connection of it. It's like pieces of a puzzle.
Pieces of a puzzle.
To see the bigger picture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it was a pleasure, Stephanie.
Thank you, Mikhail.
Okay, until next time.
Next time.
Cheers.
Bye.